So I was going to give this sermon on Rosh Hashanah Day when our theme was dismantling and building anew. But between the challenges with technology and timing, I didn't share it then. I want to share it tonight because it's about building. And I want to extend this as a question, a genuine question, and a challenge to all of us. The last community-wide program we ran at the DJC before we went into COVID lockdown was Purim. Ironically, the holiday in which we turn to face impending disaster and then celebrate a world turned upside down. Little did we know how profoundly our lives and our world would be dismantled, destabilized, and upended. It was shortly after that we, like every other community and organization, pivoted quickly to put our services and programs online. It was a quick shot up the Zoom growth curve, figuring out how to hold a Seder online with a PowerPoint Haggadah, how to put people in breakout rooms for learning sessions. And I've been expanding my Shruti box repertoire. That's the South Asian accordion-like drone instrument that you'll hear me play tomorrow, so that I can sing and accompany myself as part of prayer. I'm not conveniently married to a skilled guitar player like some cantors I know. In the midst of this transition, one of the challenges that we had to solve was how to take the two great group B'nai Mitzvah classes, 20 students in all, and celebrate this life cycle moment online with the students somehow chanting Torah, leading parts of the service, being welcomed into Jewish adulthood by the wide embrace of the DJC community and the Jewish people. The B'nai Mitzvah services were scheduled for the end of May and early June. At the end of March, when it was clear that we would not be able to gather in person, we held a meeting with the parents, on Zoom of course, to discern how to proceed. What emerged from that conversation had little to do with the technical solutions of how to put a service online. Instead, the parents grappled with conflicting values, articulated losses and hopes, and navigated through the limitations and possibilities in this new reality. Do we postpone the simcha in the hope that grandparents will be able to hand the talit to their grandchildren? Or do we engage in this ritual now as a source of grounding and connection to ancestors precisely when we can't be with one another? At a coming of age ritual, when standing in the presence of Jewish community is essential, not only before family and friends, do we postpone to a time when we can be a physical community again? Or do we redefine community as virtual and find other ways for young people and DJC members to build connection with one another? Do we try to postpone grief for what we are losing? Or do we make a decision not to postpone joy, even as the joy is simultaneous with the loss? This weighing of values and intentions, limitations and opportunities, of course, is not only about a B'nai Mitzvah celebration. This process is needed for every aspect of our unsettled lives and dismantled world. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, the first night of Rosh Hashanah, I spoke about loss, about the grieving that's essential in moving through the experience of all that is coming apart through this pandemic. Tonight, I want to explore how we discern what we need to let go of, what we need to lift up, and what tools we need within this time of pandemic to build the world anew. While Greek mythology has the image of the great phoenix rising from the ashes, and Buddhism has the beautiful white lotus flower rising out of the mud, one of Judaism's great images of this kind of transformation into new life is of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, very much alive, being carried out of Jerusalem in a coffin. No blossoming flower, no butterfly bursting out of its cocoon. We have a coffin. Early in the first century, as Roman conquest and cultural hegemony spread into the land of Israel, the Romans placed Jerusalem under siege. The Jewish extremist group, the Biryoni, blocked all Jews from trying to surrender to the Romans or attempting to flee, forcing them to fight against the Romans and block their access to the Holy Temple. Yochanan ben Zakkai was not a Biryoni. He was a leader of the Pharisees, the group of sages devoted to the study and interpretation of Torah. He understood that at this point, waging war against the Romans would lead to certain death, an end to the Jewish people and to Judaism itself. He saw that the temple, the very epicenter of Jewish practice and nationhood, was sure to be destroyed. There could be no victory over the Romans, no reclaiming of sovereignty, no going back to the way things were. So he had his students spread a rumor that he had become ill and died. His students carried him in a coffin past the Biryoni guards and out of the city. The coffin is an apt and evocative image. What they were facing was not a transition through modest tinkering or gentle flowering. It wasn't then, and it isn't now. This really is a dying, a relinquishing of the life you knew, willingly or unwillingly, and trusting that a next incarnation will only come into being once you enter the dark unknowing. And so, still in the coffin, his students brought Ben Zakkai to Vespasian, the Roman general, and they made a deal. Ben Zakkai and his followers would give up Jerusalem and the temple on 3 conditions. 1, he asked for Yavne and its sages. Yavne, the town in northern Israel, where he would set up his academy and a new center of Jewish life. 2, protection for Rabban Gamliel and his family. Gamliel being the head of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish court of law, so that it would be transplanted from Jerusalem to Yavne. And 3, a physician to treat Rabbi Tzadok, who fasted for 40 years to stave off the destruction of Jerusalem. As we unpack each of these elements, let's notice how they can serve as a roadmap for the new life, for the new Jewish vision that we have of life and might build together during the pandemic and beyond it. First, Yavne and its sages. When we are in the midst of crisis and all the uncertainty that crisis brings, it's hard to know what to let go of and when. As the great sage Reb Rogers once said, you got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. Ben Zakkai was running from Jerusalem. And without the temple, its priests and sacrifices, Judaism would have to be totally reimagined. As a city, Jerusalem was layered with a history of ancestors, kings, and prophets. Its very stones reverberated with direct divine presence. Yavne was nothing special. Choosing Yavne was a choice to invest a place with meaning, not because of what had already happened there, but because of what was being created and innovated there. Like building a shul 24 years ago on the Danforth, or like this virtual space we are in, any place can become Yavne with the right tools for generating shared purpose and practice and growing creativity. The creativity of Yavne was embodied in the sages. When you're building a new civilization out of the rubble, make sure you invite a robust team to figure it out with you. In debate, discussion, experiments in creative ritual, collective minds working together. No one can create a revolution on their own. The sages were committed to creating this new Judaism that would be continuous with its ancient roots, drawing deeply on its teachings and its values, responding to the crisis and tragedy they were still reeling from, while they invented something unrecognizable to the Jews just a generation earlier. Replacing temple rituals, they developed study, prayer, chesed, acts of justice and care as the new foundation of Jewish life. Portable anywhere, accessible to everyone. Festivals and Shabbat moved around our dining tables as substitutes for altars in the temple. They redefined their understanding of God with the clarity that the divine is not a being who lives in a home, but that God's presence lives through our words, our actions, and through community. They identified central values and inner qualities to cultivate and act on, like chokhmah, wisdom, gemilut chasadim, care for the vulnerable and all life, kavod, respect for elders and teachers, achrayut, responsibility. Mitzvot shifted from being the behaviors of a shared tribe to the technology for living these values every day and fostering these inner qualities. The sages claimed, and this is a doozy, that every innovation they introduced had already been revealed at Mount Sinai, and any future innovation was already revealed at Mount Sinai. Audacious, totally brilliant. They weren't innovating, they said. They were simply bringing divine truths into the light of day. This not only gave them tremendous creative freedom, but it also forged the tools for us, for all future generations, to renew and redefine how we serve divine purpose, the world, and each other as Jewish community. But whether they realized it or not, the B'nai Mitzvah parents stepped into this circle of sages as they discerned what to build and how. And now we, I mean each and every one of you, along with me and other teachers, ancient and contemporary, have to become sages for the next incarnation of Jewish life and how we live it at the DJC. What should Jewish spiritual practice look like? What should learning, substantive learning and growth entail? What are the tools that we need to nurture in us fortitude, moral courage, wide and sensitive awareness, and resilience to respond fully in these times? What new rituals and blessings should we be creating? A blessing for a Zoom gathering? A new ritual for being with mourners online at a Shiva? What new significance should there be in touching the mezuzah on the doorpost as you leave the safety and isolation of your home, put on your mask, and step into the streets? How will we create community? As much as we need community, and need it more than ever when we can't be physically together. Number 2, protection for Rabban Gamliel. This meant protecting the institution of the Jewish legislative body. This is a powerful values-based choice. They let the institution of the priesthood fall apart, but they protected the system of law, the means to settle conflict and to build justice. We may not know what it is that we need to create, but like the Sanhedrin, we will want to elevate values and principles that will guide the way. We know that this pandemic is causing disproportionate suffering among the elderly, among people of color, and people living in poverty. How can we take hold of the authority of the Sanhedrin to strengthen our communal voice and our collective agency for anti-racism, for climate justice, for marking Shabbat as a moral commitment to pause from the capitalist engine of producing and consuming and always wanting more, built on the backs of those who have less? Rather than leaving our justice actions to our social justice committee, how does the institution of the Sanhedrin, in its leadership and centrality, serve as a model for us? Rabban Gamliel is also from the line of King David. This is the messianic line, heralding Olam Haba, the world to come. Mystical tradition understands Olam Haba not as an afterlife or an end time in the distant future, but as the liberated world that is coming. Olam Haba, the world that is unfolding in this very moment when we are aligned with liberation. We can live in that state of redemptive evolution right now as we mobilize in the present toward a world that is just and equitable, compassionate and humane. This is essential for the orientation for what we are building. And finally, a physician to treat Rabbi Tzadok, who had fasted for 40 years to stave off destruction of Jerusalem. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, the evening of Rosh Hashanah, I spoke about the need to grieve what we have lost and continue to lose, expanding our awareness to see the grieving of others, to feel the grief we are all part of. The partner to grieving together is healing together. Rabbi Tzadok embodies all the hopes that were not fulfilled, the ways he put his life on the line to try to hold on to what was being lost, but was unsuccessful. There cannot be a moving forward that doesn't lovingly attend to each other's wounds. Marcus Buckingham said, "Many of us feel stress and get overwhelmed, not because we're taking on too much, but because we're taking on too little of what really strengthens us." These are the tools that I want to invite us to be strengthened by. Yavne and its sages, the court of Rabban Gamliel, and the physician for Rabbi Tzadok. There is no going back to the way things were. I want to ask each of you to participate in building what Jewish community and Jewish life can become, so that we can grow strong internally and reach out with strength, building Olam Haba, a liberated world with wisdom, justice, deep community, and healing. Shana Tova.